A Wisconsin jury acquits Kyle Rittenhouse of all charges.
All right, members of the jury, have you elected a foreperson? Would you give your juror number, please?
54.
54. And has the jury reached a verdict as to each count of the information?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
One verdict and one verdict only.
Yes.
Would you hand all of the paperwork to the bailiff, please?
This is the ones that we didn't fill.
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. The defendant will rise and face the jury and hearken to its verdicts.
State of Wisconsin versus Kyle Rittenhouse. As to the first count of the information, Joseph Rosenbaum. We, the jury, find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we, the jury, find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we, the jury, find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we, the jury, find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we, the jury, find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty.
Joining me now
jury,
is senior news and politics reporter at Essence Magazine and Essence.com, Malaika Jabali, who's been following the case. Malaika, thank you so much for taking time to join us for this conversation.
Absolutely, Ray. Thank you for having me.
There's no place to start. There's so much that we saw on social media with people saying everything from, what are you expecting? I'm not surprised. The system is broken. The system is working. But I would like to zoom out for a second. And I invite you to guide our viewers on just a quick timeline that this verdict is a culmination after a police shooting of Jacob Blake, because I don't want us to lose sight of that. And so how do you as an individual, and how do you as a reporter, sensing the energy of the folks in Wisconsin, feel about everything we're seeing regarding people taking this all in at one time, the actions against Jacob Blake and now the jury verdict against Kyle Rittenhouse?
Right. Well, what we're seeing is yet another example of white vigilantes who want to portray themselves as the hero and the victim at the same time. If you look at what has been going on in southeastern Wisconsin, really for decades, it's been a powder keg. And so the people who are actually victims of state violence, the people who are being incarcerated more than anywhere else in the country, because if you actually look at the stats, Black men in Wisconsin are incarcerated more than anyone else. We don't think of the social conditions as victimizing people, but Kyle Rittenhouse can cross state lines, go to a state that he does not even live in, and protect inanimate property, things that are objects. So that takes precedence, that takes priority over people's lived experience and real lives that are shattered by state violence. For example, Philando Castile's girlfriend was on the premises that day. So I'm actually Milwaukee based. I was in Kenosha during the protest. I was in Kenosha during the shooting. I was just a few blocks away when Rittenhouse shot his 3 victims. I heard the shots from where I was staying, and it was a lot of chaos that night. But if you look at the full scope of what was going on in Kenosha, a lot of what you saw was centered in very concentrated areas of the city. And during the day, there were peaceful protests. And so Philando Castile's girlfriend was there, for instance, to offer her support because she herself has been a victim of trauma. She saw her boyfriend get shot by a police officer for exercising the same rights, the same right to carry a gun that made him a victim, while Kyle Rittenhouse gets praised as a hero. He's still alive. He still is able to take a breath of life and live to see another day. But a lot of people who were there in Kenosha that day did not get that opportunity to even protest, to even assemble without the threat of violence. And we have to look at the larger conditions of the city and what led them there to begin with.
Malika, I want to zoom out for a second, because you say that you're based in Milwaukee, and I think it's valuable for the audience to know that the Milwaukee has a long legacy of segregation, of racial discrimination, and I'm curious about how that might impact what we're seeing about how police are treating black people and about apparently how vigilante citizens are treating black people.
Absolutely. Well, for one, it gives vigilantes more leeway and makes them comfortable knowing that they have an entire system that is going to support them. So in light of people who are protesting ongoing violence, ongoing incarceration, and just to remind you all, this is built up frustration. The reason why, and the importance of creating this context is so that we're not just looking at the 3 seconds of a video where someone is claiming defense. We have to also look at things beyond the legal system and look at what is just. Is it fair that people who have been enduring income inequality in the city, in the state for so long, in that region in southeastern Wisconsin for so long, is it fair that they can't even protest without armed vigilantes coming in there and threatening them with guns? Because Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't the only vigilante. There were groups of them who were protesting and arguing down and barking back against people who have lost loved ones, who've lost brothers, who have lost cousins, who've endured the same pain, and then they have to relive that trauma.
Malika, I want to pause for a second, because Reverend Jesse Jackson said this about the ruling, that it means open season on protesters. Here's Reverend Jesse Jackson and his thoughts on the ruling.
You just heard the verdict in the Rittenhouse trial. What's your response?
We agree with the family that lost 2 children. The 3rd person was shot and injured. The young man ran down the street with an open carry of an assault rifle. Killed 2 people. His conscience the rest of his life. Sets the pace for the right wingers around the country. He's now a young hero of the right wing. It means all demonstrators can be subject now to being shot. And we actually call it defensive. It's unjust, it's unfair, it's immoral. It's not good for America today.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jackson.
Now, Malika, President Biden had this to say. Now, President Biden, again, he was in surgery at the time of the ruling. He released a statement which read as such: while the verdict in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, we must acknowledge that the jury has spoken. I ran on a promise to bring Americans together because I believe that what unites us is far greater than what divides us. I know that we're not going to heal our country's wounds overnight, but I remain steadfast in my commitment to do everything in my power to ensure that every American is treated equally with fairness and dignity under the law. I urge everyone to express their views peacefully, consistent with the rule of law. Violence and destruction of property have no place in our democracy. The White House and federal authorities have been in contact with Governor Evers' office to prepare for any outcome in this case. And I have spoken with the governor this afternoon and offered support and any assistance needed to ensure public safety, close quote. Now, Malika, I'm curious about President Biden's statement, and it's clear that the president means well. He intends to ensure that America can maintain peace and order, but it's curious that he starts by saying violence has no place in our democracy, but we're here because someone turned to violence to resolve a conflict. What does that say about the language that perhaps our elected leaders use versus the mentality or the behavior of so many of our fellow citizens?
Well, this is the precise language that Biden espoused during the Kenosha shooting last August. So around that same time, he went down to Kenosha. He put out an ad that was almost equivalent to what you would see from Richard Nixon, where it was showing all this combustion that's happening in these cities and saying that we need to be a party and I'm going to be a president of law and order. So what he's saying is very consistent with how he has operated as a senator. It's how he operated as a candidate. So his commentary, and I see that he cleaned it up, because earlier when he was asked immediately after coming out of the hospital how he felt about it, it was a very simple: I stand with the jury. That's a decision that they made. I stand by them. And so there is this automatic belief in the legitimacy of a system where for decades, it has been subjective. You have people who are basing their assumptions about what is reasonable based on how they feel in that position with something, with an activity or some sort of action that's imminent. And so for them, sure, it's reasonable that this kid who could be my grandson or my nephew will cross state lines and want to protect a used car lot. But for everybody else, I think their lives matter a little bit more than a used car lot, which we should remind the watchers here, the audience, that the owners of that car lot said they didn't even ask Kyle Rittenhouse to be there. Kyle Rittenhouse reached out to them. He texted them. They met in person. They didn't say that they needed any protection. So he took it upon himself to be a white knight. And then you have an entire legal system and you have a president that tries to substantiate the legitimacy of a system that somehow keeps exploiting and keeps taunting almost Black people and those who are looking for justice.
Malika, we're going to let you get out on this, but I do want to ask, and I apologize if the question's a little difficult for the time that we have for you to answer it. How do we reconcile a system that tells us there's legitimacy in the belief of the majority, right? The jury of our peers, the election results, et cetera, et cetera. How do we reconcile the legitimacy of the beliefs of the majority when the majority hold inhumane beliefs?
Well, you know, I think that is maybe overstating things a bit, because we saw even last year that a lot of people came around to supporting Black Lives Matter activism. Even with the protests in Kenosha, it was a multicultural movement. What we're really seeing is a silent majority or a silent minority, that is having very strong backlash to the sort of, it was like a reckoning that a lot of people started to recognize, that you saw liberals, white, Black, Latino, all over the country say that this is finally the breaking point. And so you have a minority that realize that they're losing a grip on power. So they have to start redistricting. They have to start thinking about gerrymandering. They have to have anti-protester laws. Just to keep in mind, the Charlottesville trial is happening right now, where you can have cars that ram into protesters. So they're hanging on to the very little bit of power that they think they have in a society that is changing around them.
Malika Jabali, we thank you so much. And I appreciate you for reeling me back in for my reductionist and oversimplification of what the issue is at hand. And I thank you for the incisive analysis. We appreciate the work that you've done. She is the senior news and politics editor at Essence and Essence.com. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thanks for having me.
Back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Betty is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now she's free to become Bear Hug Betty. Settle in, kids. You'll be there a while. Ooh, where you going?
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?